Hello. I know that Instagram is calling everybody, but I sent invitations as well. We're discussing Ada's love notes today. I feel particularly proud of having written the book. Hello, Damien. We were here together last week. And hello, Engine Room. Thank you for inviting me. We're discussing Ada's love notes. Let me read what the back of the book says. It says that Ada's love notes is not just one woman's marital journey. It is an intimate chat with you, the reader. In this book, Ada tells her story with humor and reflection, while Sissy Lawyer discusses the legal implications of every decision we make within our marriages and how they affect us, our spouses, our children, and our families. The book provides legal information to address common dilemmas married and intended couples experience, including what kind of wedding is best for your partner and me, is best for my partner and me. Can we build a family without children? What if he or she cheats on me? Who pays the bills in our family? She or he died without a will. What next? At what point can I walk away or remarry? How can I safeguard my marriage from in-law interference? What is domestic abuse? I hope you can hear me. So that's the book is about the legal implications of our relationships, because every day we get into relationships and we get into daily living, and we find out that the truth of the matter is that there are legal implications in everything that we do. Take, for instance, a man goes to work, he does all the work, he spends his life working and making money, and then he doesn't make good provision for his family, in the sense that he doesn't make a will, or he gets ill. He doesn't even die. He gets ill, and the money is there. He can't sign his checks. Neither can he do anything with the money. It's in the bank. The bank is using it for their business. His wife is not a signatory. He hasn't made any provision for that, because nobody really waits for death, just as nobody waits for illness. But there are realities of life. Talking about the book itself, about other parts of the book, I particularly liked the first, I think it was the first chapter or the second chapter. It was the second chapter. Yes, it was chapter 2. It says, we went shopping but didn't get supper. And it's a story about, I call it Ada's Amala story. I call it that, but that's not the title. And it's about the story of how, like many young couples, they go shopping together to buy food to eat, and they find out that they have left out maybe one or two ingredients in preparing the food. And it's a story about how her mother-in-law then arrives at their door and says, you know what, you don't know how to cook, and she gives her a showdown. And Lawyer actually says there that it's about time that in-laws know that there shouldn't be any interference in a married couple's life, especially when they start their life. Because I remember once I did a 7-day, was it, or 5-day chat or challenge about the challenges of the first year of marriage, and we found out that most of the time there was a lot of interference from family. There are many interesting stories in Ada's love notes. I would suggest that you actually get a copy if you don't have one yet. It's available from the book market, just as the book market NG, just as it's available online as well. Everyone who has read it has told me that they couldn't put it down until they actually finished reading the book. And I think that is the kind of thing, it's like you're waiting for the next story. You're waiting for the next story. You're wondering what's going to happen. There's actually one place there where Ada says that, her father supported her husband, and she decided that she was going to play them a return match. And she did play a return match. And there are many interesting stories like that in the book. Of course, towards the end, it gets a bit sadder. And I think that sadness in marriage is actually a function of age. I think that the older people get, they don't take enough care to care for themselves. when I say to care about themselves, I should say, they don't. Yes, it's true. Many of us do not think about the ramifications of relationships. And when the older we get, we kind of just get very complacent about our relationships. We get complacent about our relationships. We're just confident or comfortable in it. And a lot of the time, you find out that even the spouses do not, especially the men, they don't talk. The women, they talk, but they don't talk to their spouses. They talk to third parties to the marriage. Whereas you will find out that a man will not talk, and then what happens is that he finds comfort outside. And I'm not necessarily talking about infidelity, because every gender is unfaithful at one time or the other. But he finds comfort outside. Sometimes the comfort is that he just goes out to sit with the boys and chat with them. Sometimes it is work, because they're no longer talking. The older they get, you will find out that the less time they spend together in their beds just chatting. So I found out that even in Ada's love notes, it was like that as well. She and her husband were no longer the love birds that they were when they started. And I wonder why that is in many marriages. I'm waiting for your questions. I'm trying to keep up the conversation, but I'm waiting for the questions as well. So Ada's Love Notes is a book that actually a lot of people have asked for. A lot of people have bought. And it's the first time, I think, that anybody has written a storybook and put in the legal implications of the story, or what they are doing, what the story is about. It's strange that a lot of us do not like to talk about legal issues, and yet they are the issues that affect our lives in every way. Another area of life, of family life, that a lot of people do not like. How long did it take me to write the book? It took me about 5 months to write the book. Now, 5 months, because when I started writing the book, I was just writing anytime I remembered it was there. But then one day I was abroad, and I usually travel with my laptop, and that's where I keep all my manuscripts. And I was talking to my sister-in-law actually, and she's been a bit unwell, so she hasn't been working. She's had to leave work. And so I said to her, why don't you write a book? And she said, well, that's a good idea, because she had to leave work. And I think she's got a lot of corporate experience. So I said, why don't you write a book? And it occurred to me that you're telling somebody else to write a book when your own manuscript is inside your laptop. And that night, I opened my laptop, and I didn't stop until I published the book. I actually have 3 manuscripts, and the second one, I hope, will be finished by December. But in writing Ada's Love Notes, I found out that there were many of the stories in Ada's Love Notes are actually true stories. They've been tweaked here and there, but they are stories that happened to one person or the other that I heard over the time of my being a lawyer. A lot of the stories I have tweaked slightly, but generally every story is a true story to a large extent. It is derived from somebody's true story. But some of my friends actually recognized some of the stories. And so they are not just stories that I'm telling because I have a fertile mind, but there are stories of things or incidences that have happened in real life to different people at different times. No more questions. Oh, the most touching story to me was, I'll get the chapter now. It didn't happen to me, but I know that when it happened to the person it happened to, I felt particularly touched by it. And it's Mike, a relationship I'd rather forget. And it was about Ada's husband accusing her of keeping a relationship with her ex-boyfriend. And meanwhile, she had they had left each other because of issues of discrimination. In this story, that wasn't the discrimination then, but in this story, it was about the the discrimination in the East. I missed the word now. The discrimination in the East. Wadiala, but that's not the one we know. We know the Osu caste. About the Osu caste. That was the discrimination I wrote about. But that wasn't really the discrimination that happened in the real life story. So that was the most touching story for me, because I remember that when it happened to my friend, I was very, very touched. And that was for that reason they couldn't get married. And I'm sure that they probably would have been a lot happier if they had married each other. Yes, to a large extent I had my material together, and like I said, I was just being lazy to piece them together. But then I thought later on that, you're advising somebody else to go and write a story, and you have all the material there, just put them together. Of course, a lot of it, again, some of it I expanded to make stories, and because somebody said I was a first-time writer, I had to write 250 pages. I think I have 190 something pages. I was not going to start over expanding anybody's story, or over expanding the legal comments I make. I noticed that a lot of people do not like to talk about law, so I tried to make it as much as possible to make it easy to read, easy to understand for the average person who's not a lawyer. I'm sure that a lot of lawyers also do not know a lot of what's in my book, because we all tend to think that family law is not important, whereas family law, it's from family law that you go into real estate, it's from family law that you go into inheritance, it's from family law that you go into issues of children born outside wedlock. And so it's actually a very, very, very wide area, and I don't know why a lot of lawyers think that it is just a piece of cake, being that it ends up that way, that they don't do a good job for their clients. What else? It is self-published, at least that's what I would like to call it, that is self-published. I haven't used any publishers. I started off with an editor that I wasn't happy with, so I had to do it myself. Was the 200 pages a minimum, or going to be expanded into a second book? I don't understand that question, but I was told that if I didn't have up to 200 pages, being a first-time author, people wouldn't buy the book. But I'm surprised at the way people have embraced the book. As a matter of fact, I had 1,000 copies, and as I sit here today, I have only 400 copies on 200 copies in my storage. So I shouldn't say 600 are sold, because there's still some in the bookshops and other places. But I only have 400 copies left here for whoever wants to sell them. Now, it's not an expansion into a second book. The second book is actually going to be talking about marriage breakup. It's going to be titled Too Safe to Go and Too Risky to Stay. That's the title of the book. And it's going to be talking about conversations that we should be having concerning our marriages, and considerations for whether or not the marriage is worth keeping. That's what the other book is about. And I've actually, to be honest with you, I actually enjoyed writing that, at least as far as I have done so far. I've enjoyed writing that just as much as I've enjoyed writing Ada's Love Notes. That one has some stories, but not as many or as much as Ada's Love Notes. What's your advice for spouses and providing a will for their families? I advise that people should provide wills for their family, or you can have what we call a trust for the family, so that when you have a trust, it actually provides for you as well. Earlier on, I mentioned about the fact that some of us, a will only starts to speak after death, and yet some of us fall ill before we die. So it's better to create a trust so that in the event that one gets ill and you have a lot of property, there isn't this issue of who will add, who will sign your checks or maintain your accounts. Everything is held in a trust, and you have your ways of managing the trust. And then, of course, by the time that a person dies, that trust just continues. And so your family doesn't even have to pay probate and other such fees to government. I think that that is a better way. But then again, there are tax considerations, there are other financial considerations, and one really needs to see a lawyer who knows about it before you decide whether or not you want to have a will or you want to have a trust. But for me, I would have a trust. I would have a trust. And a lot of people have said that just register a company and put everything inside the company. But I'm not sure that that works really. You know, in practical terms, I'm not sure that that's the best. Any plans to republish under a publisher if there are greater benefits? Yes, I'd like to know what the greater benefits would be. I know that the lady last week did talk about having other publishers. To be honest, I just wasn't very happy. As I said, I started off with an editor and I wasn't happy with her at all. So I decided that rather than get myself into trouble, and I knew that the moment the pace that I was working at, the moment I was forced to slow it down, I would just leave it. It will remain as a manuscript in my laptop, which I didn't want any longer. So yes, if I find greater benefits, yes, certainly. I'm actually looking for a corporate organization now that would sponsor the printing of the book, so that I could actually distribute to more women, especially those who I believe cannot afford it. But then that's a work in progress for 2020, not now. Well, when I say women, not necessarily women, people, but I know that it's women who read these things. The men hardly read them. As a divorce lawyer, how many marriages have you helped resolve their issues outside the courts? Well, let me say to you that before we get to court, I usually tell my clients, let's not go to court. But many times, many people do not come to see me until they are in court, as in their spouse has taken them to court. There have been one or two that I have just simply said, well, don't bother, let's just go to court. But how many marriages? I've been in law for 40 years. I'm sorry, I can't give you a number. But I can assure you that it's always, in fact, with every divorce petition, you have to write or give a certificate saying to the court that you have tried as much as possible to reconcile the parties. And unless you want to tell lies. But, of course, if it is an issue that cannot be reconciled, I just go to court. What would be an issue that cannot be reconciled? For instance, if they have failed to consummate the marriage, I don't see what they're doing with each other. Because your viewpoint in the book, that's an angle we don't look at a lot in Africa. Can you explain what you mean, Damien, please? I don't know what you mean by my viewpoint in the book. That's an angle we don't look at a lot in Africa. What angle do we not look at a lot in Africa? Can you help me with that? I don't understand that. Are you talking about the discrimination? Because that is an angle we look at a lot in Africa. But I also know that a lot of people in Africa do not like to talk about wills. Many years ago, I spoke to an elderly couple, at least they're older than me by many years. I spoke to them about, I spoke to the man about writing a will. And he said to me that his children love each other so much, he knows that they will never go to court. But when the Rotimi Williams family took each other to court, I think he became wiser. Because these are just like his family. All these are four brothers of the same mother, of the same father, and yet they ended up in court. If that's what you're talking about, it's an angle we need to look at in Africa. I wish there were more people here to ask me more questions. I thought that this would be a very hot seat, but I can assure it's quite cold for now. But I was expecting it to be a very hot seat. I was so sure that it would be a hot seat. But talking about the book, let me go back and talk more about the book. Maybe at least for those people who are just coming in. This is the book, and it's called Ada's Love Notes. It's a story about a young woman who went into marriage, the kind of incidences that happened in her marriage, and the legal implications of some of the things that happened. What, in my opinion, is the single most important factor in a marriage. I did a poster once, I can't remember where it is now, but I did a poster once where I said that build your marriage. I think if you scroll down CC Lawyer page, you'll probably find it there somewhere, where it says that if you build your marriage, if you build your friendship, your marriage will build itself. If you build your relationship, your marriage will build itself. That statement is also somewhere, either in the foreword of the book or my introductory comments, but saying that if you build your relationship, you will build your marriage. If you find out, most people have very good relationships before they get married, and then suddenly they get married and things fall apart. It's important to ask ourselves, what is the reason why that is? And I think I'm guilty too, and that is that you'll find out a lot of the people who, once they get married, they think, well, now I own this woman, or now I own this man, or now I've married her, so I can go ahead to do whatever else I need to do, and it breaks down a relationship. So it appears sometimes as if to say the marriage is regarded as a trap because of that. So I think that the single most important factor in a marriage is that you remain friends first and foremost. You continue to go to club together, continue to do the things that you were doing before you got married. Sorry, I meant people tend to view these issues from a cultural and or religious angle, not necessarily legal. Yes, and then they get into a lot of trouble, because when people view things without thinking about the legal implications, you see, when it's convenient, people say, oh, I am the legal wife. But when it's not convenient to be the legal wife, either because of the responsibilities involved or attached to it, then they now say, well, you know what, I am an Iyawo after all in their family. But it doesn't work out like that. You are either the legal wife, and you are the legal wife in every way. Or I always use one phrase. I always say, you cannot take the benefit without taking the burden. So when people do not think about the legal issues and they go into culture or religion or whatever. For instance, let me give a good example that I know, that I get irritated with. When people say God hates divorce, I get very, very, very irritated by that statement. Yes, indeed, God does hate divorce. In fact, human beings hate divorce. It's not just God that hates divorce. But a woman is living in the house with her husband, or a man too is living in the house with his wife. They're not talking to each other, but they're saying we won't divorce because God hates divorce. God didn't send you to be husband and wife not to talk to each other, or to be abusive to each other. And then you say, no, I will stay because of the children. Indeed, the children will not appreciate it, because a child learns what he lives with. So when a mother and a father are always fighting, then that is what the child understands. That is what the child takes into another marriage. And that's why they will say, under our culture, it is the wife that must apologize to the husband each time, whether or not the husband is guilty. What does it do? It creates animosity in the mind of the woman over the years. And then one day she just blows up and everything just goes into the air. And then they have a marriage that is just a shell. I am sure that if we really think about these things deeply, we realize that culture, we have used culture in a way that culture is not meant to be used. Culture is supposed to be something that it will look after all of us, and we would all enjoy being in a family together. If we think about it, when we had large family culture, extended family, actually the extended family was a lot happier, if we think about it, than now that we have this me and my wife. And that's why I always say to people that maybe you should just stay with customary marriage and just do it as cultural or religious and forget about legal. Because people use the religious or cultural to becloud. Yes, that is true. You are very correct. They becloud practical issues because it's convenient for them. Culture says that the husband is never guilty. How can the husband never be guilty? How can any two people live together and one of them is never guilty? Then even with that, something is wrong. Something then must be wrong with your spouse if your spouse is the only one who's guilty each time. And then another thing is that we have some cultural practices that I start to wonder. For instance, how would you say that you are inheriting a wife? I know it is culture. But then, at the end of the day, who is the legal parent of the child that comes from that inheritance? Because women have been turned into chattels. And I must say that women, we have allowed ourselves a lot to be turned into chattels in our societies. I do not want to use the word by the men. Because you will find out that a woman, even though she's struggling or being victimized in her husband's family, she victimizes her brother's wife too. So even women too are not friends of each other when it comes to cultural issues in marriage. I hope I haven't left anything behind. Love Notes Part 2 would kill Love Notes, and that's Love Notes, because it would there won't be anything new in it. But I actually have a number. Next year, I actually intend to release 3 books. The first one, as I said, is to go or to stay. A lot of it too will be, let me try and open where I have the titles. A lot of it will be storytelling, because that's the only way I know how to write. A lot of it will be storytelling, but it will not necessarily be Ada's Love Notes. But it might be stories of people who need to leave their marriage, or yes, I have 3 coming next year. It might be people who need to leave their marriages. So because I talk divorce, I talk about starting all over again. They will be primarily talk about that. First of all, as I've said, there's too safe to leave, too risky to stay. That's the next one. The one after that is Womb Man. That is WOMBMAN. Womb as in the woman womb, and it ends with man, womb man, being mom and dad. And the third one is It Is Broken, But Is It Over? Those are the 3 titles. As a matter of fact, I already have the artwork ready. Maybe I should show you. I already have the artwork for the 3 of them ready. So it's just for the manuscripts to enter into the book. How do I juggle it with work? Well, because of the fact that I'm writing law, even in my books, and I have a small law practice, really and I do a lot of family law as well. So I gather stories, I gather experiences from the cases that I read, the legal cases that I read, to also help me in writing the book. All of my work will always have that legal aspects to them. What's your advice for women who are dealing with violence in their marriage? Please flee. I have no other, I'm sorry, I have no other advice for them. And I know that I've said to some women, I will say, what are you doing there? And then I'll shut my mouth up. It's wondering that, look, how can I say that? But sincerely, I don't know how to handle violence in marriage. It's something that I just find, it just rubs against my skin. And I think that women who are dealing with violence in their marriage need to sit down and ask themselves why. I know that violence is because there's a need for control. There's a need for power over a person and control. And the moment you want to have power and control over your spouse, it can no longer be called love. That is my opinion. It can no longer be called love, because love is not an issue of power over another person. It's not an issue of control. That the man, by the time a man tells his wife, you can't go to your mother's house, or you can't go to that wedding, or you can't go to this place, not for no reason other than the fact that he wants to show that he's in control or he's the man, then I think that she needs to start to have a pot of money put aside for the evil day, because the evil day will come. Can we know a little more about your other work, as writing is your main job? Oh, I do. Writing is not my main job. I'm a lawyer. I go to court. I do work that is not even family work. But because I am beginning to consider niching my firm. Now, I think that I should start to wind down, to be honest. But I'm beginning to niche the work that I do. So I'm no longer taking work that is not related to family. Now, when I started this video, I said that family involves even real estate. It involves writing of wills. It involves mediation. It involves inheritance matters. So I'm going to limit myself within those areas alone from next year. From January next year, I am just going to wind up whatever I am doing that is not family related. So I still have a law firm to all intents and purposes. I still go to court once in a while. I don't go often. I'm not looking to become SCN. I lost that desire many years ago for some reasons. But right now, I'm just going to niche my practice into a family law practice, so that even when I retire from law work, I can still continue whatever I am doing in the family space, like writing my other books, like creating reading clubs, creating discussion clubs, being invited to high net worth events and opportunities relating to family. And I am not, can we know, and I'm not, I do not have any apology. I am not writing about how to keep a happy marriage. There are many people writing that. Many people writing about that. So I am just trying to veer off from that. How can you avoid your marriage breaking up? Yes, thank you. Yes, I already have art cover for my books. How can you avoid your marriage from breaking up? Many people are talking about how to be happy in your marriage. Really, happiness is something that is in you even before you get married, or else you can never be happy in a marriage. If you are not happy in yourself, you can never be happy in a marriage. So I am talking about, you know what, okay, it is cracked. Let's mend it. And if we cannot mend it, let's break it. That is my attitude. And that's why my third book is called It Is Broken, But It's Not the End. A word like that. It is broken, but is it over? That would be the third book, maybe released around July or August next year. Yes, I do have cover art for my upcoming books. That's the only way to keep me going. Otherwise, it'll all just sit in my laptop and it'll be there. For instance, I was invited to to give a talk somewhere on Saturday last week Saturday. And when I was preparing for it, I saw that I had an ebook in my laptop that I had never published to anybody. So that one now I'm dusting it up. I'm trying to just put a few images in the book, and it's going to be, I'm going to use it as a lead magnet, and it's called "Is Your Marriage Dead? 30 Tips for Surviving a Troubled Marriage." That's but it's I'm not selling that. I'm just going to give it out to whoever wants it. So it'll only be online. It'll only be digital copies, and I intend to actually make it. Maybe I'll make it a Christmas gift. In fact, to all my followers, maybe I'll make it a Christmas gift to all my followers. Certainly, I am trying to tidy it up because I didn't finish. I finished writing it, but I didn't. I still need to do one or two things on it. So I have all kinds of manuscripts in my laptop, and I was surprised that I must have spent a lot of time writing that, and I don't know how come I lost it in there. But yes, now thinking about it, that's what I'll do. That's the gift I'll give out at Christmas. I do enjoy writing. I enjoy writing a lot. I told someone one day that I find it very therapeutic, and I think she either didn't understand what I was saying or thought that was very strange. But when I'm upset, I sit down and I get my book. Yes, Christmas is coming early. And I get my paper and I write, or I get onto my laptop. I could actually stay there for the next 2 hours and I'm just writing. And I'm writing stuff that when I come back later to read it, I actually find that there's a lot of good stuff in it. But I do a lot of, and I do not necessarily write about family. I just write. Sometimes there was one time I wrote a whole series on just the color yellow. I joined a club on or a group on Facebook, and that week they said everybody should write about their favorite color, and yellow is my favorite color. So for the whole week, I was writing about color yellow, and I found different things to write about. I think it's a question of what interests one really. I can't remember the name of the group anymore, but I'm sure they probably threw me out now because I don't think I have been there for over a year now, because it was July last year. A whole week I was writing just about the color yellow. And then there was a time I was writing about Lagos life, about the yellow that's how it started, as a matter of fact. I was writing about the yellow sources of transport. So I was writing about the taxis, I was writing about the downfalls, I was writing about the keke maru and keke napep, and they are all in the color yellow. So for 3 days I was just writing about different things about transportation in Lagos with that in focus. And then one day I was writing about yellow flowers, another day I was writing about yellow I don't know what. Yes, certainly Christmas is coming early, because I want to ask the guy who does my images to do an image for me for the ebook, and I'm definitely going to give it out online as Christmas gifts to whoever wants it. And then another passion I have, which I'm actually too becoming quite irritated with it, is that I play a lot of online games. I think my mother, before she died, was very, very irritated with it. I could sit alone for the next 2 hours just playing games. And one day I had to ask myself that, what am I really gaining from playing games? But so I know how to keep my own company when I need to keep my company. I don't make friends easily, but when I do make friends, I make very strong friendships. I actually think this is a good idea. Maybe I will copy it. Maybe I'll do a weekly thing like this. I think it's exceedingly good, because it helps people to talk about their books, and whatever it is they are doing, whatever else is coming soon. It helps people to anticipate that, okay, there'll soon be something that another book we can look forward to. I think it's good. So I don't know if there isn't any more question. It's strange how time flies. It's almost an hour we've been here now. I'm sure there'll be a replay somehow. I'm waving at everybody who's just joining us. I'm sure there'll be a replay somewhere. But we're talking about my book, Ada's Love Notes. And about, we're talking about my book, Ada's Love Notes. We're talking about the fact that it has legal lampposts, I call it, to uncover and avoid landmines in marriage. Landmines like infidelity, landmines like infertility, landmines like inheritance, landmines like third-party influences, I call them, but I really am referring to in-laws. And as I said earlier, the book is a collection of stories of things that happened in Ada's marital life and the legal implications of the things that happened as she lived her life as a married woman. The story ends with her husband having children outside the marriage. It talks about issues of discrimination. It talks about issues of, as I said, infidelity. It talks about issues of family involvement. It talks about separation. The fact that separation is like a jail. You are not married and you're not free to go and remarry. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the book, that's what we're talking about today. Yes, it is a nice story. You should get a copy. You should get a copy of the book. It is a very nice, it's actually a very interesting book to read. I don't know where health attainer, I don't know what part of the world you're joining us from, but if you're in Nigeria, it's available at the Book Market NG, and if you're not, it's available on Amazon Kindle. That's what we're talking about today. So I mean, if you have any questions about family, it does talk about divorce. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. In fact, I agree with you that is a good option too for some situations. Yes, it is. It is a good option for some situations. It's and I also was saying earlier that there's actually another book that's coming up next year or early next year, and it's titled "Too Safe to Live and Too Risky to Stay." And it's about taking a decision about whether you want to leave your marriage or not. Oh, you are in Lokoja in Nigeria, then you should order from the Book Market NG. They seem to have a good spread around. Maybe what I should do is that after, I don't know, maybe I'll send you a private DM to send you a sample chapter of the book, and that I'm sure that will encourage you to order a copy. I promise, I better note it down, that I will send you a sample copy of the book. A sample chapter of the book. I better note it down. But I can assure you that everybody who's read the book has said that they couldn't put it down until they finished reading it. It's an easy read. I'm very aware of the fact that when people get into a lot of technical jargon, other people turn off. So it's a very, 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 very easy read for anybody. All those who have read it have come back to me to say, Oh, I finished it. I couldn't put it down. Somebody said she couldn't even fall asleep until she finished reading it. Sample chapter, yes. Not the whole book. No, 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 no. Just a sample chapter in the book. Yes, you can order. You can order from the book market engine. Yes. Talking about divorce and whether it's a good situation, a lot of us think that remaining in a marriage is a good option. As I said earlier, I said we then hide under God hates marriage. What will happen to my vows? I want to stay with my vows. But sincerely, I call it, when people say that they want to stay with their vows, I actually call it as, I always say that in that case, the marriage has left you, even though you haven't left the marriage. The marriage has left you, because when your spouse moves on, when your spouse is no longer interested in the marriage, when your spouse has taken on somebody else or has separated from you, and you are still saying God, my vows, there are no vows anymore, because vows involve two people. And once one person decides that, you know what, I'm not interested in these vows anymore, there's really nothing that one is holding on to at that stage. So yes, I think that divorce is a good option too for some situations. Or when there's domestic violence, certainly I think that people should have gone since yesterday when there's domestic violence. Yes. A lot of us then, some of us, we say that because of the children. But again, children are stronger than we give them kudos for. And you'll find out that a child that lives with violence, a child that sees his mother and father verbally abusing each other, a child whose mother is always saying to him that, oh, your father is bad, or the father is saying your mother is bad, lives believing that, well, if their marriage has not broken, then that is how marriage is. And so when he grows up, that is all he brings into his own marriage as well. So it's important for us to not get carried away by emotions, but decide that, you know what, my life is probably better served by leaving the marriage. Yes, I think that you should engine room. I think that you should send Health Attainer a direct message about how to get the book from your company. But I will send a sample. Maybe what I will do is I will send you, that is engine room, I will send you the sample, the link to the sample chapter, and then you can send that to her. Yes, the children grow up with a warped sense of how a relationship should be. And that's why we have it from generation to generation. And we think that something is, and we know that something is wrong. Because children grow up in an environment that is not healthy. Yes, I will send you yes, sure, you will send that to her. I will send you the link to the sample chapter. That might also help you in the marketing of the book, in case other people want to read a sample chapter. I must say that people have said that the book, the fact that it has legal commentary as they go along in the book, that it has made it different from other books. It's not just a work of fiction now, but this morning I was thinking about it, that if I was asked what's the genre of my book, what would I call it? And I decided that I would call it educational fiction. I decided that I'd call it educational fiction, and I think that that is what my book is, to be honest. I wish doctors too would write such. I wish accountants too would write such kind of books, where we are reading it and we are not subsumed by the technical language of that particular profession. I wish they would. I think that women generally, I was at an event today. It was to do with building a real estate business. I don't know why I went, because I left after a few hours, but I took away one comment from the from the speaker, and he said women do not buy real estate, and he said it's about time women understand that land is not sexually transmitted. And of course it was funny, everybody laughed, but there's a lot of truth in it. It's about time that women start to take control of their own lives, so that if anything goes wrong with the marriage, then they are able to be their own person. And I think that the greatest way to build wealth is to have real estate. I don't know if there are no more questions. We'll probably end the session tonight. Any more questions before I end the session? How time flies when one is having a good time. We've been here for 53 minutes, and it feels like it's just been here 20 minutes or so, because I've enjoyed every moment that I've been here. Thank you very much for everybody who turned up. I'm sure that we'll also watch the replay, and if there are any more questions after the replay, I'm sure that the Book Market NG would let me know. Thank you very much. Bye bye now.